Welcome to Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you are looking for an interesting commercial, marketing, and sales podcast that is bold, unfiltered, unconventional, and authentic, you are at the right place. Curious how to play the game better and smarter? We will share how we crack the code to hyper growth for our customers. We will invite amazing people. We will share our experience, the first attempts in learning, cracking the code, and finally the results. And last but not least, we will give you food for thought. Now, let's get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. And today we have a very special guest, and that's Judith Schunke. Do I pronounce it right, Judith?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, I got to know Judith by a business friend of ours, and Judith has been leading and transforming marketing and communication teams for international IT companies. And Judith is ready with everything she learned for a new step in her life, and we really love to talk with her about the transformations, her interests, the difference that communications can make in building a company, building it up for their audience. So, Judith, could you tell a little bit more about where you're up to and what your drivers are?
Yes, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Liesbeth, and hello, Jeroen. Thanks for having me. Essentially, I help organizations to transform their communications functions to be agile and stay human-centric in the digital era. There's really two trends that are sort of colliding that make this more necessary than before. One is digital, of course, and the other one is societal expectations. So if you look at digital, for example, we all know, right? Digital has changed everything: the customer, the influencer, the channels, the tools, the processes, you can even go further than that. When you look at the World Economic Forum, they published a report about the labor market, and they anticipate that by 2025, there will be, and I have to get the number, 97 million new roles that are adapted to the new division of labor between humans and machines. And of course, that is going to be impacting marketing and communications as well, right? The other trend that my consulting essentially bases itself on is around societal expectations. If you look, for example, at the consumer or people in general, they now expect organizations to be doing a lot more than producing or providing products and services. They expect that organizations now have a purpose beyond that. A classic example, of course, is ESG, not necessarily a new concept, but the investment community is now looking at measuring organizations on their environmental, social, and governance beyond just financial, indicators. So, I don't know, another statistic, just because it comes to mind, I'm sure you've seen the Edelman Trust Barometer that came out earlier this year. And in that, it says that 86% of people are now expecting CEOs to speak up about societal issues as well. So there's a lot going on. And the reality is that the role of communications has become so much more important, but they really haven't been able to transform themselves enough to have an operating model to deal with this importance and to be able to make decisions at digital speed. So it's really about, giving organizations a helping hand to make sure that they have an operating model that they have in place that can deal with all of that dynamic. In a nutshell, it wasn't quite a nutshell, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it's a good start. So, Jeroen, do we still have to make the promise of this podcast? Because I think we have kind of
I think we can easily wrap it up. I think this is, there's probably, I can say there hasn't been a better time to start transforming your communications function than now, right? With all these exciting new trends coming in, the importance of it on all types of levels, right? Being it the people actually in the field and the people in the boardrooms and so on, the society as such. I think it has impacted everything, right? But yeah, to really stay relevant and keep adding value, right? I think you said it as well, Judith. The function really needs to transform, and we are so happy to have you in today to basically discuss that, the why, and also we want to learn from your experiences in the field. What our audience also wants to see is the how, right? Because we can talk forever about the why, right? But the how is what really drives the actual change and makes it a reality. But before we actually kick it off and go deep, we always have a drink with our guest, and it will be a different cup of tea today, right, Judith? So
literally.
What are we drinking today, Judith, or what are you drinking today?
Well, I'm drinking a rooibos tea. And actually, I know this is a podcast, but for anyone that is just listening, or behind me is a whole wall of books and memories from my parents' travel through Africa and Asia. I was brought up abroad. So I was born in Tanzania, spent my childhood in Botswana, spent my teenage years in Bangkok. And these are the collectible items from their journey. So the mug and the rooibos tea is also in memory of our African time. So tea is the thing. What about you, Jeroen?
I'm having a coffee.
Coffee, just a normal coffee. Cheers. Well, I'm actually a kind of tea addict, to be honest. Caused by my daughter. My brother, he really loves teas, and he buys very beautiful teas around the world. So he influenced her actually. So very soon after giving small gifts to her, she said, "Why are we drinking the normal tea bags instead of having nice teas?" So now, talking about traveling, the tea I have right now, it's a kind of green tea, but a little bit milky. And I bought it in Thailand, not so far from Bangkok, last year. And originally it's Chinese tea, but it's a really lovely flavor. I'm going to enjoy that one.
Brilliant. And it's not a fruit tea. You said you have milk in it, right?
No, it's more milky is in the leaves. So it's a green tea, but it's kind of milky, smoky green tea. So it's really lovely.
You've got to send me some.
Yeah, I will. I will. So cheers. We'll do this. So let's kick off, I would say. So Judith, I wonder, what you said before, it's because of all the trends that are going on right now, it's right now the time for communications to change or to take maybe a different position in the organization. So what do you see happening there? Are there great examples already of companies who are doing it the right way, or are they all still sitting back a little bit too much, more following and then taking a leading role?
I don't think that communications teams are sitting back. I would say it's quite the opposite. Because there's so much in demand, they're being pulled into all sorts of directions and basically just don't have the space to innovate. Most comms leaders know that they have to transform their organizations. Some have done, others and most don't have the resources very often to actually do it in the context of being so busy. Most of them actually have the skill probably to do it in-house, but that means they have to carve out a big chunk of their time in order to focus on that, and they don't have the luxury at the moment. But the reality is that in this world of where communications has become so important, the function has to move from being still very transactional to a function that is much more about business outcomes and value. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that is, communication function that is a supporting function and that's it, typically focuses on, product press releases or writing an email blog on behalf of the CEO, very much reactive. Whereas if you're an organization, a communications function that is much more value driven, you become much more of a strategic advisor. It is much more about the reputation piece, about changing perceptions and behaviors. And of course, the metrics underneath that follow that same theme. Liesbeth, when we talked a few days ago, we talked about measurement as well. There is now a recognition, right, by CEOs how important reputation is. I mean, just look at the flip side. I read a statistic the other day about 86% of CEOs now seeing reputation risk as one of the strategic or the most important risk factors compared to anything else. And reputation risk, flip side, is of course reputation building. So there's a recognition of that, right? So communications, is traditionally really good at agenda setting and actually being the department that can help the organization to make sure that they formulate and communicate on the reputational drivers. So, if you want to stay relevant, this is the time now to change, because you will otherwise move further and further back to being literally just an order-taking function, rather than an organization that really, helps to grow the business, to protect it, and be relevant in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what you're saying, a brand is your reputation. It's not your logo and the nice colors. And that is very often misunderstood, how important it is to build up the right reputation in the marketplace.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the logo is the visual representation, right? But it's a tactical thing that comes at the end, right? It's not, it's still the narrative at the front end and the purpose, what does your company stand for, and how do you bring that into everything that you do, whether it is sales or a customer service or marketing or comms. The logo is then giving you, a way to show that. Maybe it's a talking point as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. So a couple of points, right? I think important in line with the, at least what I've seen and what I see in the market and so on, is with change also comes an impact on culture and how departments have always done it before, right? And I think marketing has made that shift probably, some time ago, I would say. But I think still what I see across the markets is that in the comms world, it's not really that typical to have like a data-driven or measurement-driven culture, right, adopted. And therefore, that is also hard. They see struggling to connect themselves to business outcomes and metrics, right, that go beyond just output-driven metrics, like you said, so many press releases per month. Oh, we had a great month because we did 3 press releases instead of 2, right? But what kind of tips or advice would you give communication departments or leaders as such, maybe in the first thing, to make that shift towards a more measurement-driven and data-driven culture? And what are the first steps they can probably take to go away from I'm being seen as successful if I did 3 press releases instead of 2? Towards probably more metrics where the business talks about, such as customer lifetime value, reputation. So what would be the first kind of tips or you would have for leaders to drive that change?
It is very much about connecting the right dots, right? And there are now tools out there that definitely measure reputation. One of the companies that I've been using a lot in previous organizations is RepTrack. They have a very well thought through methodology, data driven, where they measure companies' reputation, and they're sort of tied into I believe it's 8 drivers of reputation, and so there are definitely metrics out there that measure communication success at a more strategic level, but it's also about making sure that you get the dependencies right. I think one of the biggest challenges I see when it comes to also integration with other departments is that metrics are not thought through enough in terms of, if you make a commitment to a metric, very often you're dependent on another department. and how you make sure that those things come together, right? At a more tactical level is a good example. So, for example, if the organization has a strategy to expand the services or products it offers to its existing install base, right? So from a marketing perspective, you might go down the account-based marketing route. From a marketing comms perspective, you may decide that you want to make sure that you capture those company successes in whatever form it may be, and you want to basically promote and, you know, share with the market and influence the market about what you are capable of doing. And so one of the metrics might be customer success stories, right? But if you have customer success stories as your metric, and you are not actually at the same time giving sales or the account teams a metric to provide quality leads to the comms team to actually then do their job, it's going to be very difficult, you know. So, and that very often that disconnect happens. So, you know, at a high level, it should all be connected. And I think what usually happens, each department decides their metrics on their own rather than trying to bring them into a system where it's all connected so that actually everyone is running towards the same goal and the same targets, right?
But yeah, that's what we see a lot as well, that siloed approach. So sales has its own plan, year plan, marketing, communications as well. What we also see kind of competition between demand and brand. So this whole siloed approach, siloed metrics, instead of connecting all the dots also from that perspective, saying, okay, how does the longer term strategy looks like? How do you connect it to your year planning, and how do you integrate actually those plannings in each other and connect shared metrics to it?
Yes,
I think that's where the magic happens, but it's still a challenge.
It is. I mean, but I think, you know, especially when it comes to the demand versus the brand approach. In my most previous role, I was leading marketing and communications. And, you know, obviously you had everything, brand and reputation, and then you had demand and lead generation. First of all, I think there needs to be an appreciation, is that there are different things. Are you asking your customer to buy, or are you asking your customer to think, right? And the integration can't be around the one campaign trying to do everything. You're just going to confuse your customer. But there needs to be an appreciation that it's a journey, and that depending on where you are in the journey, you first may want to get the customer to think, you know, want them to believe that you're the company that can lead them into the future. And then further the line you go into a demand gen initiative. What I would say is that at the center of it, if you want to really also look at marketing and communications integration, has to be the narrative. If you can get the narrative right, you know, the company narrative and what you're actually trying to stand for and what you're trying to communicate, it links into purpose, it links into what you want to be known for, are good at in the market, then you can throw all of the other tools at it, right? And that's how you enable then your teams to say, okay, we now have that linkage, and we can do our job, what we're good at, demand, you know, brand, well. And it's a red thread, right? I mean, that's kind of how I see it, and it's work. I don't know what your experience is in terms of, you know, finding linkage between brand and you know, demand, but that's certainly one of my learnings.
I agree with you. It has to be a mixture, and it's very important what you're saying, to build up your thought leadership in the market, and also showing that to also other audiences, because we're talking about the market space or new business or install base, but don't forget about your investors, your employees. Communications is so much more than only, you know, creating awareness to kind of prepping demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Jeroen, you were saying earlier, and I want to come back to that. You were saying, how can we make sure communications is more data driven? You know, I think we need to appreciate that they are already a lot more data driven, because, you know, traditionally, when you look at old PR, right? All public relations, really, your prime audience was the media, and it was about influence, and it still is about influence. But, we now very often talk about who is your strategic influencer rather than who's the journalist that you need to influence, because of digital, your strategic influencers may be a journalist, but it may also be someone that has developed an opinion brand online, right? So it becomes, and as a result, you have so many more tools available to understand, obviously, what's going on in the market and etc. And especially with AI becoming so dominant now as a way for comms teams to predict the next trending topic, to predict, what red flags are potentially coming up, enables them to be, if used well, to be on the front foot. So if you have an engagement with an executive or, a company executive that, says, oh, we need to do this, right? If you have and utilize artificial intelligence or machine learning, let's be honest, it's not quite AI, is it? It's more machine learning. You are able to say, no, but the market, we know from the data that this isn't actually what our customers are worried about. What we know is that these are the topics that actually they want to hear about. So data is becoming incredibly important for communications, but they're probably not using it as much yet than they should.
Yeah, so it's a big opportunity right then. So really good insights, and I think it's all about starting to adopt small steps, right? You can't be just all of a sudden data driven, right? I think it's a long journey, but it starts with probably the right leadership that drives that cultural and behavior, right? And helps the teams, right? I think the strong element of the comms is always to build that relationships, right? And to influence the target audience, right? And to inspire them. And then if data can be actually more helpful in the dialogue, probably to take the more opinionated stuff out of it, right? Because like you said, we maybe to go on a little bit of a different tangent, but what we've experienced, for example, a lot in the market still is, for example, for selecting account-based marketing accounts, right? Then still too much you see sometimes the logos being selected by a CEO because he or she thinks they're shiny and nice on the website, right, to get in, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the right ones. And that's probably the same here, right? We could create the best opinion article because the CEO thinks that is the right way to go, right? But with the fingertips now on data and tooling to provide us with insights where actually the market is looking for, that can take the opinionated stuff out of it more, and you can instantly become more relevant.
Well, absolutely. And to be honest, going in there with saying, well, the data tells us this is a different conversation, then I don't think it's the right one.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's also a way of working smarter. Because what you said to me, Judith, when we talked about it before, that AI and machine learning shouldn't be seen as the enemy, but as a co-worker, you told me. And that was a very interesting one for me, that it doesn't make you maybe replaceable, but it will help you to take a different role. So this is also, I think, for communication roles, how to stay relevant. How does the job role looks like in 5 years? So that will probably much more from what you said, a following role or a supporting role, towards that leading and serving role, that you really look at what is happening and how are we going to adapt and to create an opinion around stuff, how we want to, what voice would we like to have. So it's a whole different way of driving your communication strategy, I would say.
I mean, I'm an optimist anyway, but if you're being positive about it, and we should be positive about it, right? I mean, we're also in business, this is about making sure that we are making sure that the teams are equipped with the best tools and the best skills and best operating model to, serve their company and their target audiences as best as they can. And the good news with, the growing AI base and robots coming to play is that soft skills, and I don't like the term because it suggests it's not as important, but soft skills are the ones that are going to be so much more important now and in the future, because it is things like emotional intelligence, empathy, that will be the hard skills of tomorrow. Because the machines, they will do this transactional stuff for you, meaning, those will come to the forefront because, and that's great news for comms people, because they're typically very good at these skills. And, if you, the whole point of transformation to an agile and human-centering organization is that you understand your purpose, you have an operating model so that you can utilize all of these artificial tools and make decisions at the speed of light, because that's what we need to do. Things are happening in real time. And so it's actually a great place to be if you can embrace it and, have your co-worker help you be great. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And where to start, Judith? Of course, next to, consulting you, but if you want to take the first steps yourself, where to start? Where does a comms department start with?
At the end of the day, every company is different. So whilst there is a process, that you can go through, the first thing you need to have is a bit of a discovery session, right? But most of the time, it starts with understanding your purpose, right? And your purpose of, what are you for? What are you for, right? And from there, you can then, do all sorts of things in terms of journey planning and the areas you need to look at, whether that's talent or tools or processes. But the interesting thing is that what I've learned in the transformations I've been part of or led is that it's really important as part of that journey to also understand what you're no longer for and doing, right? So that's a really important advice.
I think it's Judith. I think it's a very important skill, and I call it unlearning.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes you need to learn what you don't need to do anymore. Yeah.
But also setting expectations, because transformation is hard, and everyone is worried, whether it's fear of job loss sometimes, or in some cases with executives, they're thinking that you're no longer going to be servicing them, for example. So it's hard, right?
Creating PowerPoints or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Speeches and in the comms world, but but it is a good point, because the second biggest learning for me is that you have to bring everyone and everything with you on the journey. And so when you go through a transformation, make sure that you engage with all of your internal stakeholders, including your team, of course, at the right time, with the right information, with the right tools. And that is really critical, because most transformation projects fail because they haven't actually been thought through in terms of bringing people with you, right? So in terms of transformation, these are probably the things I would say at a top line are critical. Nice.
Yeah, I like that. And I think also don't forget, right, the transforming part, right? If you sketch an aspirational identity that you want to reach, right, it's very important for the leader to reassure that the team is all on one page, right? But what I've seen also, if you put the fun into into transformations, right, and create also a little bit of fun around it, right, with different types of workshops and celebrating moments of when things were failing, right, actually when you go to the next stage or you have a small success. I think that will make so much of a difference, because otherwise, like you said, Judith, I think otherwise it can become something scary, right? Oh, I need to change, and what is happening? I don't know. But if you can create that optimistic mindset, right, and sketch that aspirational identity that you all are going after, and create that milestones which you want to achieve, and bring the fun into it.
But also
that makes so much of a
celebrating.
difference.
Yeah.
But also celebrating small successes.
Yes.
That's what I really enjoyed when we were driving. Well, it sounds like that transformation has a goal on its own. That's not what I mean, but at least that you want to, achieve something, and you have to take those different steps. And what you're saying, it's hard sometimes, specifically to get the rest of the organization with you. So if there are small successes, celebrate it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, it's like with everything in life, right? Create an environment where people have skin in the game, right? Bring, as part of bringing people on the journey, and especially in the team, don't do this away from the team. Bring the team in, especially around the purpose work. I mean, that's great. We're going to define our purpose together. That it isn't something that just some people at the top somewhere decide, and then they're going to say, here you go, this is the new purpose. It's not going to work.
Yeah, this is the new purpose. We have a can you design a poster? We print it out, and that's it. Yeah.
That's the same with golden rules or the the company values. If you don't live and breathe it top down, it doesn't live, and then it's just a sign on the wall. It's nothing.
Yeah.
People need to have
I have another question, Judith. I was thinking for one of the things that triggered me actually when we talked about that, and what we see a lot currently, and we are quite active in that from our own business, is the subscription economy, right? And it's not anymore around having the greatest product, right? I think people will essentially deliver the value, right, and the relationships, and what you actually triggered me with talking about that from a DNA or a heritage perspective. Comms have always been strong in that, right? So influencing people, building relationships, and so on. So I'm just thinking out loud here now, right? So in relation to also enabling and helping, for example, sales and marketing teams, do you actually see also a role in that, for example, to help them to bring the narrative alive and the messaging alive in the market? How could they better engage with customers now? Now everything becomes more digital. I'm just thinking, do we see also an opportunity there for comms to become actually relevant in developing the skills of the other commercial departments to become more relationship driven, so to say? I'm just thinking out loud here, but
the short answer is yes. Again, let's assume that the comms budget and the resources would be, forever massive. Probably comes down to prioritization. But especially in a world where, we know that the best ambassadors for you as a company are your own employees, and, they're on social media, they're everywhere, right? And in fact, the role of comms as being the gate holder of content, and they have to be like policing every blog that goes out there.
Oh, yeah.
It still happens a lot, but the reality is, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, you need to scale. And so what you really want to create is an environment where you encourage others to create their own content and publish it. And the role of comms in that case is a bit like expanding media training, right? Media training is traditionally only for the company spokespeople that are going to talk to media or analysts or investors. And I wouldn't say that goes away. I think, you still have to have an appreciation that there's certain people that are going to be the official spokespeople. But this type of training can be easily adapted to a broader set of employees, and so that they understand the do's and don'ts, that they understand what makes good copy, for example, and then provide them also with the tools. So yes, I totally agree, and I think this is where it could go. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nice. I really love that example, because we've been there ourselves as well, right? I think 8 years ago or so, you would receive from comms, probably working together with HR, a guideline document about what you cannot post on LinkedIn, right? And now you flip the coin, actually, like you said. It's about how can we help you create fantastic copy, right? And copywriting is one of the most important skills. Actually, I spoke last week to a sales leader and in a German company, and she said she's actually hiring for salespeople who could write in a good way, because that's the way you build up your brand, right? And build up relationships through LinkedIn. So yeah, I think that's a great example, Judith. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. And you know, we need to appeal to people's common sense, right? And it's all about trust. You know, trust is always the magic word that it comes all back to, right? But in a world where everything is more connected, we seem to be getting more disconnected. And then it's you know, so you have to kind of create operating models and systems that actually enable people to then also make decisions fast in their role and capacity. You cannot no longer just police everything and control everything upside down, and you know, the organization is closed from the rest of the world. It's, you know, information democracy, you know. So yeah, it's about how can we enable and trust is at the core of it, right?
And I think for employees, that's also fun, you know, to offer a kind of training, because you will benefit it for always. You know, it doesn't matter if it's your own social media or, you know, you're going to work for another company. It doesn't matter. Actually, it will help you. What you're saying, what is important, the do's and don'ts. Specifically when you stay within those within the lines, that there is no wrong. You know, I remember the first time I was going to post, I thought, oh God, what am I going to write? Maybe it's not perfect, or what would people think? But that's not how it works. As long as you stay in the lines and you're positive about your company or what you're doing, or you know, then you have a lot of freedom actually.
Yeah, be authentic, right? I think that's more important. Like you said, the example, Judith, of things that need to be processed and controlled, and then can take up to a couple of months, right, to get an article signed off. That's not how the world is working anymore, right? It's better to have a blog with a spelling error out in 2 days, because it's about content and authenticity.
Yeah, and you know, talking about what we talked about earlier, you know, is the comms function a transactional supporting function, or is it adding value? That is not adding value, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, very nice. Great examples, Judith. So yeah, I think we've got some very nice insights. I must say personally, I was not that familiar with comms, so I learned a lot actually today. So thanks a lot for sharing that, Judith. And I see now more and more that there's a substantial opportunity for comms across the entire business, but more specifically also for the marketing and sales teams, I would say, to they can add so much more value there. So great to have these insights. And like you said, right, it's about adopting that approach, right? Reassuring that you have a strategy and a transformation plan or framework, I would say, almost in place, right? Because otherwise the risk could be that you still as a function could be asked for probably everything in the business, right? Especially now with COVID also, the last year, I would say the internal comms part has been probably more heavy lifting on that function. But yeah, if you can connect yourself to truly business objectives, right, and helping the people in the organization to create that environment for them so that they can become better, there's a tremendous opportunity. So thanks a lot for sharing those.
Yeah, I have maybe one more from my side, one more question. So let's say a comms department think, okay, we want to take that leading or serving role, but so they know it, they know how their ideal world would look like from a purpose perspective. But what are the showstoppers? Do you have a clue?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, you know, it could be, there could be a lot of showstoppers, you know. I mean, I would say that the two common ones, and we briefly talked about it earlier, is that it's the fear of job loss. And not just in terms of the team, who may not really be the ones making a decision whether this transformation is happening or not, but it's a lot of responsibility even for leaders. You know, there could be a case where some leaders are just not prepared to take, this big chunk of responsibility. Because you need to be a bit of a trailblazer, in all fairness, and you need to have courage to do it. I think. Well, the other thing, more often than not, is lack of appetite for change within the organization. Now, most CEOs, most leaders would say, no, we need to change. Change is good. But you very quickly, when you just sort of dig a little bit underneath it, that there isn't really much depth behind it. And, you can actually fairly easily do some tests around it, right? But typically there isn't a culture of innovation really set up for it. And so, you will have to understand before you go into a transformation where you're coming from. As much as you know where you want to go, right? You need to really understand where you're coming from so that you can kind of objection handle that from the beginning, because there will be tough conversations. The thing is, it's hard. It definitely is hard, but it is necessary and it is possible, right? One of a colleague of mine, actually in the public sector, she said one thing. She said, when I went through the transformation with my organization and communications, the most important thing that really for me was that not saved me, but that ensured everything happened, is that she hired someone to come in internally as her strategic operating advisor. And I understand it, because you need someone that is just dedicated to looking at everything, right? Because it's hard, but it is possible.
Doing it together, that's something I also think also in this case what would work perfectly.
Yes, I think that's a nice wrap up of today. So yeah, thanks all. And thank you very much, Judith, for being our guest for today. So really appreciated your stories, your thoughts, and your compelling ideas to bring to the table. So I think I've learned a lot today. So I'm very grateful for that. So, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So yeah, thanks all for listening in, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, Judith. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll catch you in the next episode.